Your wife orchestrated everything. Keisha arranged their disappearance. She put your children in that hell.
No. That's impossible.
The pancakes arrived at 6 in the morning, delivered by a bewildered restaurant owner who'd been paid triple to open early and prepare food for 2 traumatized children in a private medical clinic. Daniel watched as Naomi and Isaiah stared at the plates in front of them, like they were seeing a mirage. The stack of fluffy pancakes drowning in strawberries and whipped cream, the plate of golden dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets, orange juice in actual glass cups, not plastic. Isaiah reached out with a trembling hand, then stopped, looking at Naomi. She nodded. Permission granted. He grabbed a nugget and shoved it into his mouth, chewing frantically like someone might take it away. Naomi did the same with the pancakes, her careful composure cracking as hunger overrode caution. "Slow down," the nurse said gently. "Your stomachs aren't used to this much food. You'll make yourselves sick." But the children couldn't slow down. 3 years of scarcity had rewired their brains. Food was survival. Food was safety. Food might not be there tomorrow, so you ate what you could now. Daniel watched his children eat like starving animals and felt something inside him shatter that he hadn't known was still whole. These were his babies, the ones he'd sung lullabies to, the ones he'd kissed goodnight and promised nothing bad would ever happen to. And he'd failed them. Whether or not Keisha had orchestrated their disappearance, he had still failed to find them, failed to protect them, failed to keep his promises. His phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. He stepped out of the room to answer it. "Mr. Moon?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "This is Detective Park Ji-soo with the Seoul Metropolitan Police. I'm handling the case involving Sister Grace and the illegal orphanage. I need you to come to the station for questioning." "When?" Daniel asked. "Now would be preferable. We have the children listed as victims, but we also have some questions about how you knew where to find them." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I'll be there, after I make sure my children are settled and safe." "Mr. Moon, this is a criminal investigation. Your cooperation isn't optional. Neither is my presence with my traumatized children, who've just been rescued from a trafficking situation. I'll be at the station by noon. If that's a problem, you can arrest me. But you should know I have very good lawyers." He hung up before she could respond. Choi appeared at his elbow, her expression grim. "The news broke 10 minutes ago," she said, showing him her phone. The headline screamed across the screen. "Pharmaceutical billionaire's dead children found alive in Seoul trafficking ring." Daniel scrolled through the article. It had everything. Photos of Isaiah and Naomi from 3 years ago, smiling and healthy. Photos of the building where they'd been held. Quotes from neighbors about mixed children who'd been seen begging. And already, buried in the 3rd paragraph, the first hint of what was coming. Questions remain about how the children ended up in Korea when they supposedly died in France. Sources close to the investigation suggest the original accident may not have been what it seemed. "It's starting," Daniel said. "It's going to get worse," Choi replied. "I have contacts in the French police. They're reopening the accident investigation. They're re-examining the bodies that were buried. They're pulling phone records, financial transactions, everything. If Keisha was involved, they'll find the evidence." "Have you told her?" Daniel asked. "Does she know the children are alive?" "I thought you should be the one to tell her." Daniel closed his eyes. Keisha, his wife. The woman he'd loved more than anything. The woman who'd given him his children. The woman who'd spent 3 years in a psychiatric facility, catatonic with grief. If she had orchestrated their disappearance, if her mental illness had driven her to do the unthinkable, then telling her they were alive would either heal her or destroy what little sanity she had left. "I need to see her," he said, "in person. She deserves to hear it from me, not from the news. The children will be here, safe with medical staff and security. I'll be back before they notice I'm gone." It was a lie and they both knew it. Naomi noticed everything. The flight to Switzerland took 11 hours. Daniel spent every minute of it on the phone with lawyers, with his company's crisis management team, with board members who wanted to know if the IPO could survive this scandal. He answered their questions mechanically, his mind elsewhere. In a clinic with 2 children who didn't trust him. In a psychiatric facility with a wife who might have destroyed their family. The facility was nestled in the Swiss Alps, a beautiful prison disguised as a healing retreat. Daniel had chosen it specifically for Keisha after the accident. The best doctors, the most advanced treatments, no expense spared. He'd visited every month for 3 years, sitting beside her bed, holding her hand, talking to a woman who couldn't hear him. Dr. Werner met him at the entrance. The psychiatrist was in his 60s, with kind eyes and the permanently tired expression of someone who carried other people's pain professionally. "She's had a breakthrough," Dr. Werner said without preamble. 2 days ago, she started speaking, asking questions. It's like something in her mind suddenly unlocked. "What kind of questions?" Daniel asked. "About the accident, about the children, about what happened that day. Mr. Moon, I need to tell you something. The things she's saying, they're concerning. She's talking about planning a trip, about hiding the children, about someone named Marcus who was helping her. It sounds like delusion, possibly false memory construction. But given the news reports I'm seeing about your children being found alive, it's not delusion," Daniel said. "It's confession." Dr. Werner's face went pale. "My God." Keisha was in the garden, sitting on a bench surrounded by flowers she probably didn't see. She was thinner than Daniel remembered, her hair longer, streaked with gray she was too young to have. She wore comfortable clothes provided by the facility, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on something in the middle distance. Daniel sat down beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "They found them," Daniel said finally. "Isaiah and Naomi, they're alive." Keisha didn't react, didn't turn, and didn't even blink. Then, slowly, a single tear rolled down her cheek. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember everything now. What I did, what I planned. What went wrong?" "Tell me," Daniel said. "Tell me all of it." And so she did. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. She told him about the postpartum psychosis that had started after the twins were born. How she'd hidden it from him, afraid he'd think she was a bad mother. How the delusions had grown worse over time, convincing her that Isaiah's constant illnesses were because of something in Daniel's family. Something genetic, something Korean. She told him about the voices in her head that whispered the children would die if they stayed, that she needed to take them away, start fresh, remove them from the toxic influences. She told him about confiding in Marcus Reed, her colleague from the research facility, how Marcus had tried to convince her to get help, but she'd been too far gone to listen. How eventually Marcus had agreed to help her, thinking he could control the situation, thinking he could fix things once she was thinking clearly again. "He got me fake IDs," Keisha said, her voice hollow. "For me and the children. New names, new identities. He arranged for a safe house in Korea, somewhere no one would look. He had contacts there from medical mission work. A woman who ran an orphanage who agreed to keep the children temporarily while I got treatment, got better. The plan was to go to Paris first, make it look like we were on vacation, then disappear from there. Daniel would think we died. He'd mourn, he'd move on, and eventually, when I was better, I'd come back for the children. We'd start a new life somewhere else." "But the accident," Daniel prompted. "The accident was real," Keisha said. "I was driving to the private airfield where Marcus had arranged a charter flight to Korea. The children were in the back seat. Isaiah was crying. Naomi was asking where we were going. I was trying to explain in a way that made sense, but nothing made sense anymore. I wasn't making sense. And then there was a truck. It came out of nowhere. I swerved. We hit the barrier. And everything went black." She turned to look at Daniel for the first time. Her eyes were devastated. When I woke up 3 months later, I couldn't remember any of it. The planning, the fake IDs, Marcus, Korea. All I knew was that my babies were dead and it was somehow my fault. The guilt was there, even though the memory wasn't. And the doctors, they told me about trauma amnesia, how sometimes the brain protects us from unbearable things by hiding them. I believed them. I believed I'd just taken the children on a simple trip, and fate had stolen them from me. But they weren't in the car, Daniel said. The bodies they found, they weren't Isaiah and Naomi. No, Keisha agreed. Before I left for the airfield, I'd already given the children to Marcus. He was supposed to take them directly to Korea, while I created the paper trail in Paris. The fake vacation, the rental car records, everything that would make people believe we'd been together when the accident happened. But after I crashed, after I was in a coma, Marcus panicked. He knew if the authorities started investigating, they'd find inconsistencies. So her voice broke. She couldn't continue for a moment. He found 2 bodies, she finally said. Children who died in a house fire in a poor neighborhood outside Paris. Unidentified. No family looking for them. He used his medical access to substitute their DNA samples for testing. Made it look like they were our children. Then he took Isaiah and Naomi to Korea as planned. Left them with Sister Grace. Sent her money every month to care for them. And then Marcus died, Daniel said. 2 years ago. Heart attack. He was only 47. The guilt probably killed him. And when he died, the money stopped. Sister Grace kept the children anyway, but not out of kindness. She realized she could use them. Mixed-race children draw more sympathy when begging. More money. She saw an opportunity. Daniel sat in silence, processing the magnitude of what his wife had done. Not in malice, not in cruelty, but in madness, in sickness, in a disease that had convinced her she was saving her children while actually destroying them. They hate me, don't they? Keisha asked quietly. Isaiah and Naomi, when they find out what I did, they'll hate me. They don't remember you yet, Daniel said. 3 years of trauma has buried most of their early memories. They know the names we gave them, but they don't connect those names to people. To us. They're just surviving right now. That's worse, Keisha said. I took their childhood, their safety, their family, and I took their memories too. I erased myself from their lives so completely that when they finally came home, they didn't even know what home was. Why are you remembering now? Daniel asked. After 3 years of nothing, why is it all coming back? I saw them, Keisha said. On the news 2 days ago, before the big story broke. Just a local report about children begging at Gangnam Station. The camera zoomed in on a little girl's face, and I saw Naomi's birthmark, and something in my brain just clicked, like a lock opening. And suddenly, I remembered everything. Every terrible choice, every delusional thought, every step that led to this nightmare. She looked at Daniel with eyes that held nothing but despair. I need you to make me a promise, she said. When this all comes out, when the police charge me, when I go to trial, I need you to tell Isaiah and Naomi the truth. Don't hide it. Don't sugarcoat it. Tell them their mother loved them so much that she broke. Tell them mental illness isn't an excuse, but it is an explanation. And tell them I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You can tell them yourself, Daniel said. No, Keisha said firmly. I can't, because seeing me will only hurt them more. I'm the monster in their story. Daniel, the reason they suffered. Maybe someday, years from now, when they've healed. Maybe then. But not now. Now I need to pay for what I did. I need to face the consequences. And I need to do it away from them, so they can heal without my shadow hanging over them. She stood up, her movement slow and deliberate. Dr. Werner is calling the police, isn't he? He has to, legally, now that I've confessed to a crime. Yes, Daniel said, he is. Good, Keisha said. That's good. At least I can do one thing right. I can take responsibility. I can make sure justice is served. Keisha, I loved you, she said, cutting him off. I loved our children. That was real. Whatever sickness twisted my mind, that love was always real. I need you to believe that. I do believe it, Daniel said. And he did. Because he'd seen mental illness destroy strong people before. Seen good people do terrible things when their minds betrayed them. Keisha hadn't been evil. She'd been sick. Desperately, catastrophically sick. But their children had still suffered. And that suffering had been real too. 2 police officers arrived 20 minutes later. They were professional, almost gentle, as they explained to Keisha that she was being detained for questioning regarding the kidnapping and disappearance of Isaiah and Naomi Moon. She went with them without resistance, without tears, her face eerily calm. Dr. Werner approached Daniel as they watched her being led away. She'll need psychiatric evaluation before any trial, the doctor said. She wasn't in her right mind when these events occurred. Any competent lawyer will argue diminished capacity. I know, Daniel said. I'll make sure she has the best legal representation. Even though she destroyed your life? She didn't destroy my life, Daniel said quietly. She destroyed her own. I'm just trying to salvage what's left. The flight back to Seoul was longer than the flight there had been. Or maybe it just felt that way. Daniel spent the hours composing and deleting text messages to his children. What do you say to kids who don't remember you? How do you explain that their mother loved them even while hurting them? How do you build trust when the foundation of their world had been lies? He arrived back at the clinic 16 hours after leaving. It was late evening in Seoul. He expected the children to be asleep. Instead, he found Naomi in the hallway outside their room, pacing like a caged animal. She saw him, and her expression shifted from anxiety to fury in an instant. Where were you? She demanded. You said you'd be here. You said we were safe. Then you disappeared for hours, and no one would tell us where you went. I'm sorry, Daniel said. I had to take care of something important. Something about your case. We're not a case, Naomi snapped. We're people, and you don't just leave people without explaining where you're going. She was right. Of course she was right. But how could he explain he'd been halfway around the world confronting the woman who'd caused all this? You're absolutely right, Daniel said. I should have told you I was leaving. I should have asked if it was okay. That was wrong of me. Naomi blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. Oh? Okay then. How's Isaiah? Daniel asked. Sleeping. They gave him medicine for the pain in his leg. He doesn't like sleeping without me there, but the nurse said I needed rest too. I'm supposed to be in the other room, but I can't sleep when I can't see him. Would it help if I sat here with you? Daniel offered. You could sleep in that chair, and I'll make sure nothing happens to either of you. Naomi studied him with those old, suspicious eyes. Why would you do that? Because you need rest, and because I need to prove to you that I keep my word. I said I'd keep you safe. That includes making sure you get enough sleep to heal. You can't stay awake all night, Naomi said. I've stayed awake for longer, Daniel replied. 3 years of not sleeping well will train you for anything. Something flickered across Naomi's face. A question she wanted to ask but didn't know how. Daniel waited, giving her space to find the words. Why didn't you sleep? She finally asked. Because you were gone, Daniel said simply. You and Isaiah. I thought you were dead, and that made sleep very difficult. Sister Grace said our parents were happy we were gone, that we were too expensive and too much trouble. Sister Grace was a liar who hurt children for money, Daniel said, his voice hard. Everything she told you was designed to make you easier to control. None of it was true. But how do I know you're not lying too? Naomi asked. The question wasn't accusatory. It was genuine. A child trying to navigate a world where every adult had proven untrustworthy. You don't, Daniel admitted. Not yet. But every day, I'm going to do things that prove I'm telling the truth. I'm going to feed you, keep you safe, get you medical care, answer your questions honestly, even when the answers are hard. And eventually, maybe you'll decide I'm trustworthy. Or maybe you won't. Either way, I'm not going anywhere. Naomi considered this. Then, slowly, she walked over to the chair outside Isaiah's room and curled up in it. "You can sit in that chair," she said, pointing to one across the hall. "Where I can see you. If you fall asleep and something happens, I'll know it's your fault." "Fair enough," Daniel said. He sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair and watched his daughter slowly relax into sleep. It took her almost an hour, her body tense, jerking awake every time a nurse walked past or a door closed somewhere in the clinic. But finally, exhaustion won. Her breathing evened out. Her small body went still. Daniel kept his promise. He didn't sleep, just watched the hallway, alert for any threat, real or imagined. And when a nurse tried to pass by to check on Isaiah, Daniel stopped her, asked her to wait until Naomi woke up so the girl wouldn't be startled by unexplained activity. The nurse looked at him like he was crazy, but she waited. Around 3 in the morning, Daniel's phone buzzed with a news alert. The story had exploded internationally. Wife of billionaire CEO arrested in connection with children's disappearance. The article included Keisha's booking photo, her face blank and defeated. It included statements from the Swiss police, from Sister Grace's lawyer, from Daniel's company trying to distance itself from the scandal. His phone immediately flooded with messages. The board demanding his resignation. Investors threatening to pull out of the IPO. Su Yin sending a single text that just said, "I warned you," but also messages from people he'd lost touch with. Old friends, colleagues, even some strangers, messages of support, of shock, of grief for what his family had endured. One message stood out from the anonymous sender who'd started all of this. "The truth is out now, all of it. I'm sure you're wondering who I am, why I waited so long to tell you, why I helped Sister Grace hide them before I decided to expose her. The answer is complicated. But here's the simple version. I loved your wife. I thought I was helping her. I thought keeping the children hidden while she recovered was the merciful thing to do. I was wrong. I've been wrong about everything. And now, I'm dying. Stage 4 cancer. Months at most. I wanted to make things right before I go. I wanted those children back with their father. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry for all of it. This is goodbye, Daniel. Take care of them. Love them enough for both of us. Marcus Reed Jr." Daniel stared at the message. Marcus Reed Jr., Marcus's son. The person who'd known about his father's involvement from the beginning. Who'd watched his father die from guilt. Who'd continued sending money to Sister Grace for months after Marcus Sr.'s death before his own cancer diagnosis made him reassess everything. A dying man trying to fix his father's mistakes. That's who'd saved his children. Daniel wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at the wasted years, at the suffering that could have been prevented if Marcus Jr. had spoken up sooner. But anger required energy he didn't have. Instead, he just felt tired, so impossibly tired. He typed back, "Thank you for telling me, for saving them. I hope you find peace." No response came. Maybe Marcus Jr. was already dead. Maybe he'd sent that last message and then let go. His final act of atonement complete. As dawn broke over Seoul, Naomi stirred in her chair. Her eyes opened slowly, then went wide with panic when she didn't immediately see Isaiah. Then she saw the room, remembered where she was, and her body relaxed slightly. She looked across the hall at Daniel, still sitting exactly where she'd left him. "You stayed," she said. It wasn't quite a question. "I stayed," Daniel confirmed. "All night?" "All night," Naomi processed this. "Sister Grace never stayed. When we were scared at night, she'd lock us in the room and tell us to shut up. We learned to be quiet." "I'm not Sister Grace," Daniel said. "No," Naomi agreed. "You're not." It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was a start. A tiny crack in the walls she'd built around herself. And through that crack, the smallest possibility that maybe, Just maybe this strange man who claimed to be her father might actually be telling the truth. A nurse appeared with breakfast. Real breakfast this time, not just whatever they could scavenge. Eggs, and toast, and fresh fruit. Naomi took the tray warily, then carried it into Isaiah's room. Daniel heard her wake her brother gently, heard the soft murmur of their voices as she helped him sit up to eat. Choi appeared in the hallway, looking like she hadn't slept either. "The police want to talk to the children," she said quietly. "Today, they need statements about Sister Grace, about the orphanage, about everything that happened there." "They're not ready," Daniel said. "I know, but it's not optional. This is a criminal case. The children are key witnesses." "Then I'll be there with them. Every second. If the questioning gets too intense, if they start to shut down, I'm ending it. I don't care what the police say. They might not let you in the room. Your family, not an official guardian yet." "Watch me," Daniel said. Choi smiled slightly. "There's the Daniel Moon I know. Took you long enough to show up." "I've been a little distracted," Daniel said dryly. "The company is imploding, you know. The IPO is probably dead. Investors are running. The board is calling for your head." "I don't care," Daniel said, and he meant it. The company that had been his whole world for 3 years suddenly felt like nothing. Just money, just business. Meaningless compared to the 2 children sleeping in the room behind him. "What are you going to do?" Choi asked. "I'm going to help my children heal," Daniel said. "Everything else can wait." "And your wife?" "She'll face trial. She'll accept her punishment. And if the children ever want to see her, I'll make that happen. But only when they're ready. Only when it's what they need, not what she needs." "That's very gracious of you," Choi observed. "No," Daniel said. "It's just realistic. Keisha was sick. She did terrible things because her mind was broken. But hating her won't help Isaiah and Naomi heal. They need to understand that mental illness is complicated, that people can love you and still hurt you, that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean choosing not to let the past poison the future." "That's a very mature perspective," Choi said. "Ask me again in a month when I'm not running on 2 hours of sleep in 3 days, Daniel said. "I might feel differently." But he wouldn't. Because somewhere in the last 72 hours, somewhere between finding his children begging on the street and sitting vigil in a hospital hallway, Daniel had realized something important. Revenge wouldn't heal his children. Anger wouldn't give them back their stolen years. Justice, yes. Consequences, absolutely. But vengeance? That would only create more pain. His children needed safety, stability, patience, love, all the things they'd been denied. And he was going to give them those things, no matter how long it took, no matter what it cost. Behind him, he heard Isaiah laugh. A small sound, barely more than a breath. But it was a laugh. His son, who'd spent 3 years in hell, had just laughed at something Naomi said. And in that moment, Daniel knew he'd made the right choice. Coming back to Seoul, rescuing them, sacrificing everything else. Because that laugh was worth more than any company, any IPO, any amount of money in the world. That laugh was hope, and hope was what they all needed now. The police interview room was designed to be non-threatening, with soft chairs and pastel walls and toys scattered in one corner. But Isaiah and Naomi sat rigid in their seats anyway, their hands clasped together so tightly their knuckles had gone white. Detective Park Jisoo sat across from them, her expression professionally sympathetic. A child psychologist sat nearby, ready to intervene if the questioning became too traumatic. Daniel stood against the back wall, his arms crossed, watching every micro-expression on his children's faces. "Can you tell me about Sister Grace?" Detective Park asked gently. "What was she like?" Naomi spoke first. She always did. Isaiah rarely spoke at all anymore, his voice lost somewhere in the 3 years of learning that silence was safer than words. "She was mean," Naomi said simply. She hit us when we didn't bring back enough money. She locked us in the dark room if we cried. She told us we were worthless, that nobody wanted mixed children, that we should be grateful she let us stay at all. The dark room, Detective Park repeated, making notes. Can you describe it? Naomi's grip on Isaiah's hand tightened. It was small, no windows, just black. She'd put us in there for hours, sometimes a whole day. No food, no water, no bathroom. You learned not to cry pretty fast when you were in the dark room. Daniel felt his jaw clench so hard his teeth ached. The dark room, just another torture he hadn't known about. Another nightmare his children had endured. How many other children were there? The detective asked. 16 when we left, Naomi said. But children came and went. Some got adopted. Some just disappeared. Sister Grace said they found better places, but we all knew that was a lie. Nobody leaves that place for somewhere better. Did Sister Grace ever hurt you physically? Beyond hitting? Naomi hesitated. Her eyes flicked to Isaiah, some silent communication passing between them. Then she nodded slowly. She burned us, Naomi said quietly. With cigarettes. When we fought back. When we tried to protect the younger kids. Isaiah has 3 scars. I have 7. Detective Park's professional mask slipped slightly. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Why? Naomi asked, her tone sharp. You didn't do it, and being sorry doesn't make the scars go away. No, the detective agreed. It doesn't, but it matters that people care what happened to you. It matters that we're going to make sure Sister Grace never hurts another child. Will she go to prison? Naomi asked. Yes, for a very long time. Good, Naomi said with fierce satisfaction. Then, quieter, what about the others? The kids still there, where did they go? They're in temporary foster care while we locate their families or find permanent placements, Detective Park said. Because of you? Because you were brave enough to talk to us, we're going to help all of them. It was the right thing to say. Naomi's shoulders straightened slightly. She needed to believe their suffering had purpose, that by surviving, by speaking up, she'd saved others. The detective turned her attention to Isaiah. Can you tell me anything you remember? Anything at all? Isaiah just stared at the table. His breathing had gotten faster, shallower. Naomi squeezed his hand. He doesn't like to talk, she said. Sister Grace used to hurt him worse when he talked. So he stopped. That's okay, the psychologist interjected. Isaiah, you don't have to speak if you don't want to. You can draw or write or just sit here, whatever feels safe for you. Isaiah's eyes darted to Daniel, then away, then back, like he was trying to reconcile the man claiming to be his father with the reality of 3 years, where no father had come to save him. Daniel couldn't take it anymore. He moved from the wall, crossing to the table. That's enough for today. They've told you what you need to know. The rest can wait. Mr. Moon, we're not finished. Yes, you are, Daniel said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Look at them. They're shutting down. You push any harder and you'll traumatize them worse. You have enough for your case against Sister Grace. The rest can wait until they're ready. Detective Park looked like she wanted to argue, but the psychologist nodded in agreement. He's right. We should stop here. They left the police station an hour later, Daniel's lawyers having navigated the remainder of the bureaucratic requirements. Naomi walked close to Isaiah, supporting him when his leg hurt too much. They moved through the world like soldiers in enemy territory, always alert, always watching for threats. Where are we going now? Naomi asked as they climbed into Choi's car. Back to the clinic for now, Daniel said. But I'm working on finding us a home, somewhere you can feel safe, somewhere that's just ours. What about your apartment? Naomi asked. The one the nurse mentioned, the big one with the view. It's too high up, Daniel said. Too many windows, too exposed. I'm looking at houses, ground floor, multiple exits, secure but not imprisoned. Places where you can run, if you need to, but also places where you can breathe. Naomi studied him with those evaluating eyes. You've thought about this a lot. I've thought about nothing else, Daniel admitted. Back at the clinic, the doctors had completed their full evaluations. The news was both better and worse than Daniel had feared. Isaiah's malnutrition could be corrected with proper diet and time. His leg would require surgery, but they could fix the bone alignment, and with physical therapy, he'd walk normally again. The infections would clear with antibiotics, the physical damage would heal. The psychological damage was a different story. They both show signs of complex PTSD, the psychologist explained in a private meeting with Daniel. 3 years of sustained trauma during critical developmental years has fundamentally changed how their brains process threat and safety. Naomi has developed hypervigilance and parentification. She's taken on the adult role of protecting Isaiah, and she won't be able to let that go easily. Isaiah has selective mutism triggered by trauma. He can speak, physically, but his brain has learned that speaking leads to pain, so it's shut down that pathway. Can they recover? Daniel asked. With time, therapy, and a stable environment? Yes. But it won't be fast, and it won't be linear. They'll have setbacks, triggers, moments where they regress. You need to be prepared for that. I am, Daniel said, though he wasn't. Not really. How could anyone be prepared to watch their children fight invisible demons? The media storm continued. Daniel's company stock had plummeted. The board had voted to remove him as CEO, effective immediately. The IPO was cancelled. Years of work, billions of dollars in potential value, gone. Su Yin had broken off their engagement in a press release that painted her as the victim of Daniel's mental instability and poor judgment. Daniel read the news reports and felt nothing. Let them have the company. Let them have the money. He'd build something new if he needed to. But right now, building a relationship with his children was the only thing that mattered. 3 weeks after the rescue, Daniel found a house. It was in a quiet neighborhood outside Central Seoul, a single-story home with a garden and high walls for privacy, but low enough to climb if needed. It had 4 bedrooms, multiple exits, and a security system that could be controlled from inside but didn't feel like a prison. He furnished it carefully, consulting child trauma specialists about colors and layouts and furniture that would feel safe rather than overwhelming. When he brought Isaiah and Naomi to see it, they walked through the rooms in silence, touching nothing, their faces carefully blank. This is your home, Daniel said, for as long as you want it. You each have your own room, but there's also a room with 2 beds if you want to sleep near each other. There are locks on the inside of all the doors so you can feel secure, but no locks on the outside. You're never trapped. You can always leave any room whenever you want. Naomi walked to the window in what would be her room. She tested the lock, opened it, looked out at the garden. We can really go outside whenever we want. Whenever you want, Daniel confirmed. The garden is private. Nobody can see in. You can sit out there, play out there, just exist out there without anyone watching. Isaiah had found the room with 2 beds. He sat on one, testing the mattress. It was soft, probably the first soft mattress he'd slept on in 3 years. He lay down slowly, his small body almost disappearing into the plush comforter. His eyes closed. For a moment, he looked peaceful. Then his eyes snapped open again, anxiety flooding back. He couldn't let himself relax. Not yet. Relaxing meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant danger. It's going to take time, Naomi said, appearing in the doorway. She'd been watching her brother. For us to believe this is real, that it's not a trick, that you won't hurt us or give us back to Sister Grace, or decide we're too much trouble. I know, Daniel said. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. They moved into the house that week. Daniel had arranged for a trauma therapist to visit 3 times a week. Dr. Sarah Kim was Korean American, trained in treating child trauma survivors, and most importantly, patient. She didn't push, didn't force. just created a safe space and waited for the children to be ready to use it. Naomi engaged first. She was practical, analytical, willing to work through her trauma if it meant protecting Isaiah better. She talked about the orphanage, about Sister Grace, about the things they'd endured. She cried sometimes, but always silently, like she'd learned crying out loud was dangerous. Isaiah remained silent for weeks. He'd sit in the therapy sessions, drawing elaborate pictures of dark rooms and locked doors and children with no faces. Dr. Kim said the drawings were communication, that he was processing, that speaking would come when his brain felt safe enough. Daniel learned their routines. Naomi woke up at 5 a.m. every day, her body trained to Sister Grace's schedule. She'd check every room in the house, making sure all the exits were still accessible, that nothing had changed overnight. Isaiah couldn't eat breakfast until Naomi had declared it safe. They both hoarded food in their rooms, unable to trust that meals would keep coming regularly. Small moments of progress appeared like flowers through concrete. One morning, Isaiah ate 3 bites of cereal without Naomi's permission first. One afternoon, Naomi fell asleep on the couch without checking all the windows. One evening, they both laughed at a cartoon on television. Genuine laughter that lasted almost 30 seconds before they caught themselves and went quiet again. Daniel documented these moments in his mind like treasures. Each small victory mattered. Each glimpse of the children they'd been before, trauma reshaped them. 2 months after moving into the house, Daniel received word that Keisha's trial had concluded. She'd pleaded guilty to kidnapping and child endangerment. The psychiatric evaluation had confirmed severe postpartum psychosis at the time of the crimes. The judge had been merciful, sentencing her to 5 years in a psychiatric prison facility rather than a traditional prison. She would receive treatment, she would be monitored, and when she was released, she would have to register as a child abuser for the rest of her life. Daniel hadn't attended the trial. Neither had the children. Dr. Kim had advised against it. Too much. Too soon. But the news was public, and Naomi read everything she could find online. "Our mother did this," she said one evening, her voice carefully neutral. "That's what the news says. Our mother is the reason we were at Sister Grace's." Daniel had been dreading this conversation. "Yes. Your mother was very sick. Her brain wasn't working right. She thought she was saving you, but she was actually hurting you. But you didn't know," Naomi said. "You really thought we were dead." "I really thought you were dead," Daniel confirmed. "If I'd known you were alive, I would have found you so much sooner. I would have torn the world apart looking for you." "Why did she do it?" Naomi asked. "Even if she was sick, why did she think taking us away would help?" "It was a fair question. A hard question." Daniel tried to answer honestly. "Your mother had an illness called postpartum psychosis. It happens sometimes after women have babies. Their brain chemistry changes and they can't think clearly. They hear voices or have thoughts that seem real, but aren't. Your mother became convinced that Isaiah's health problems were because of something in my family, in our Korean heritage. She thought if she removed you from that influence, Isaiah would get better." "That doesn't make sense," Naomi said. "No," Daniel agreed. "It doesn't, because it wasn't logical thinking. It was sick thinking. The illness made her believe things that weren't true. And then she made choices based on those false beliefs." Isaiah was listening too, Daniel realized. The boy hadn't spoken, but his eyes were fixed on Daniel's face, absorbing every word. "Do we have to see her?" Naomi asked. "Our mother, do we have to visit her in prison?" "Not unless you want to," Daniel said. "That's completely your choice. Now, or years from now, or never. Whatever you need to feel safe and heal." "I don't want to," Naomi said immediately. "Not now, maybe not ever." "Is that bad? Am I supposed to want to see my mother?" "There's no supposed to," Daniel said. "You feel what you feel. That's allowed. You don't owe anyone forgiveness or reconciliation. Not even your mother. Especially not your mother." Relief flooded Naomi's face. like she'd been carrying guilt about her anger and Daniel had just given her permission to feel it. That night, for the first time since the rescue, Isaiah spoke. Just one word, whispered so quietly Daniel almost missed it. Appa, the Korean word for father. Daniel froze. What did you say? Isaiah looked terrified, like he'd made a mistake, but he repeated it, slightly louder. Appa. Daniel felt tears burn his eyes. He blinked them back, not wanting to scare Isaiah with too much emotion. Yes. I'm your Appa. I've always been your Appa. Isaiah nodded. Then he got up from his chair, walked across the room, and did something he hadn't done since the rescue. He climbed into Daniel's lap, just sat there, his small body tense but present, trusting enough to be held. Daniel wrapped his arms around his son and held him like he'd been dying to hold him for 3 years. Gently, carefully, like Isaiah was made of glass and might shatter at any moment. Naomi watched from across the room, her expression unreadable. Then she stood and crossed to them too. She didn't climb into Daniel's lap. She was too old for that, too independent. But she leaned against his shoulder, her small body pressed against his side. And for the first time since the rescue, they existed as a family, broken, traumatized, struggling, but together. Dr. Kim called it a breakthrough. Daniel called it a miracle. Isaiah and Naomi didn't call it anything. They just allowed themselves, for a brief moment, to be children who were held by someone who would protect them, someone who wouldn't hurt them, someone who was actually, finally, their father. The weeks turned into months. Isaiah had his surgery, and the leg began to heal properly. He started physical therapy, working to rebuild strength in muscles that had atrophied from 3 years of improper use. He began speaking more, short sentences at first, then longer ones. His voice was different than Daniel remembered, deeper, more hesitant. But it was there. Naomi started school, entering 4th grade late. She struggled at first, her education having been completely disrupted. But she was smart, resilient, determined. She caught up quickly, driven by the same fierce will that had kept her alive in the orphanage. Isaiah wasn't ready for school yet. Too many people, too much stimulation, too many potential triggers. He worked with private tutors at home instead, slowly rebuilding the academic foundation he'd lost. They both had nightmares. Naomi's were about the dark room, about Sister Grace coming back, about being abandoned again. Isaiah's were about fire and car crashes and losing Naomi. They'd wake up screaming, and Daniel would go to them, sitting with them until the terror passed, reminding them they were safe, that the past couldn't hurt them anymore. 6 months after the rescue, Choi visited with news. Sister Grace had been sentenced to 25 years in prison. The other children from the orphanage had been placed with families or in legitimate foster care. The building had been shut down, condemned, slated for demolition. It's over, Choi said. The legal part, anyway. You can move forward now. But moving forward wasn't that simple. Daniel's pharmaceutical company was gone, sold to competitors and broken into pieces. His fortune had been decimated by legal fees and settlements and the collapse of the IPO. He wasn't poor, but he wasn't a billionaire anymore either. He'd have to rebuild his career, his reputation, his life. He found work consulting for smaller pharmaceutical firms, using his expertise to help develop treatments while maintaining flexible hours that allowed him to be present for his children. It was different from running his own empire, but it was meaningful. And it gave him the time he needed to be the father Isaiah and Naomi deserved. Soo Yin tried to contact him once, 6 months after everything fell apart. She wanted to apologize, she said. She'd been wrong to abandon him. Maybe they could try again. Daniel declined, politely but firmly. That chapter of his life was closed. He had no room in his future for people who'd left when things got hard. His children had taught him what real strength looked like, what real love required. Soo Yin didn't measure up. 1 year after the rescue, Dr. Kim declared that Isaiah and Naomi were ready for a family trip. Nothing too intense, just a weekend at the beach. Somewhere with open spaces and fresh air and the chance to make good memories to counterbalance the bad ones. They drove to the coast on a Friday afternoon, the children chattering nervously in the back seat. They'd never seen the ocean, or at least didn't remember seeing it. Naomi peppered Daniel with questions about tides and marine life and whether there were sharks. Isaiah just stared out the window, watching the landscape change from city to countryside to coastline. When they arrived at the beach house Daniel had rented, Naomi ran straight to the window overlooking the ocean. "It's so big," she breathed. "I didn't know water could be that big." Isaiah followed more slowly, his legs still bothering him sometimes despite the surgery. He stood next to his sister, both of them silent, watching waves crash against the shore. "Can we go down there?" Naomi asked. "Of course," Daniel said. "That's why we came." They spent the afternoon on the beach, Naomi running in and out of the surf, shrieking with surprised laughter when the cold water hit her legs. Isaiah sitting at the edge, letting the foam wash over his feet, his face peaceful in a way Daniel had never seen. They built sandcastles that the tide destroyed, and rebuilt them and destroyed them again. They collected shells and chased crabs and forgot, for a few hours, about dark rooms and cigarette burns and all the ways the world had hurt them. That evening, they sat on the beach watching the sunset. Naomi leaned against Daniel's shoulder, Isaiah on his other side. They were quiet, but it was a comfortable quiet. The kind of silence that exists between people who don't need to fill every moment with words. "Appa," Isaiah said softly. "Yes? Are we going to be okay?" It was the question Daniel had been asking himself for a year, the question that kept him awake at night, the question that had no easy answer. "I don't know," Daniel said honestly. "Some days will be harder than others. You'll have bad days where everything feels scary again. But yes, I think eventually we're going to be okay because we have each other, because we're not giving up, because even when it's hard, we keep trying." "Sister Grace used to say we'd never be okay," Naomi said quietly. "That kids like us were broken forever." "Sister Grace was wrong about a lot of things," Daniel said. "You're not broken. You're hurt. And hurt things can heal. It takes time and work and patience. But healing is possible." "Do you promise?" Isaiah asked. Daniel wanted to promise, wanted to guarantee that everything would be perfect, that the trauma would fade, that they'd all live happily ever after. But he'd learned that some promises couldn't be kept, that life didn't work that way. "I promise I'll do everything in my power to help you heal," he said instead. "I promise I'll be here, every day, no matter what. I promise I'll love you, even on the days when you can't love yourselves. That's what I can promise. The rest, we'll figure out together." Naomi turned to look at him, her dark eyes serious. "Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever wish we'd actually died? That you'd kept your company and your money and your life? That you'd never found us?" The question hit Daniel like a physical blow. "No, never, not even for a second." "But you lost everything because of us." "I lost things," Daniel corrected. "Money, a company, a life I'd built on grief and workaholism. Those weren't everything. You two are everything. Finding you, getting you back, that's the best thing that ever happened to me. Even with all the hard parts, even with the trauma and the healing and the nightmares, I would do it all again in a heartbeat." "Really?" Isaiah whispered. "Really," Daniel said firmly. "You are my children. You're my family. There's nothing in the world more valuable than that. Not money, not success, not anything." Naomi was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Appa?" "Yes? I think maybe I'm starting to believe you. It wasn't I love you. It wasn't I forgive you. It wasn't even I trust you completely. But it was something, a crack in the walls, a beginning. And sometimes, Daniel had learned, beginnings were enough." They stayed at the beach for 3 days. On the last morning, Daniel woke to find both children in his room. They did this sometimes, when nightmares got bad or anxiety spiked. They'd creep into his room and sleep on the floor beside his bed, needing the reassurance of his presence. But this time, they weren't on the floor. Isaiah was curled up on one side of the bed, still asleep. Naomi was sitting at the edge, watching the sunrise through the window. "Couldn't sleep?" Daniel asked quietly. Naomi shook her head. "Too many good thoughts. They keep me awake sometimes." "Is that weird?" "Not weird at all." "What kind of good thoughts?" "Thoughts about maybe having a future," Naomi said. "About maybe going to college someday. About maybe being okay. Those kinds of thoughts feel dangerous. Like if I think them too hard, they'll disappear." "They won't disappear," Daniel said. "You can have those dreams, Naomi. You can want things. You can plan for a future. The past doesn't have to define everything that comes next." "Do you really believe that?" she asked. "I'm learning to," Daniel said. "You're teaching me." Naomi smiled. A real smile, not the careful half smile she usually allowed herself. "We're teaching each other, I think." They drove back to Seoul that afternoon, the children quiet in the back seat, processing their first really good memories in years. When they pulled into the driveway of their house, Naomi said, "It feels good, coming home. I didn't think anywhere would ever feel like home again." "It's your home," Daniel said, "for as long as you want it." "I want it," Isaiah said softly. "I want home." "Me too," Naomi added. "And Appa, thank you for not giving up on us, even when we were hard to love." "You were never hard to love," Daniel said. "Finding you was hard. Getting you to trust me was hard. But loving you, that was the easiest thing I've ever done." They went inside, back to their routines, back to therapy and school and healing. But something had shifted, some fundamental understanding that they were in this together. That they were building something new from the wreckage of what had been destroyed. The anonymous messages from Marcus Reed Jr. had stopped weeks ago. Daniel assumed he'd died, his final act of redemption complete. A private investigator confirmed it 2 months later. Marcus had passed away peacefully, leaving behind a detailed confession about everything he and his father had done. The confession was delivered to the courts, to the police, providing additional evidence for Sister Grace's trial, and officially clearing Daniel of any wrongdoing in the children's disappearance. Keisha served her time quietly. Daniel received occasional updates from her lawyers. She was participating in therapy, taking her medications, working through her guilt in supervised sessions. She'd written hundreds of letters to Isaiah and Naomi. None of them had been sent. She was waiting, the lawyers said, waiting until the children were ready. If they were ever ready. Daniel kept those letters in a locked drawer. Someday, maybe when Isaiah and Naomi were older and more healed, he'd show them. Let them decide if they wanted to read their mother's words. Let them choose their own relationship with the woman who'd both created them and destroyed their childhoods. But that was a choice for the future. For now, they had enough to deal with, enough healing to do, enough life to rebuild. 2 years after the rescue, on Isaiah's 11th birthday, they had a small party in the garden. Just the three of them, and Dr. Kim and Choi, who'd become something like family. Isaiah blew out the candles on his cake and made a wish. Naomi teased him about wishing for something impossible. They laughed together, real laughter, the kind that came from joy instead of hysteria. Later that night, after the guests had left and the children were getting ready for bed, Isaiah appeared in Daniel's doorway. "Appa," he said, "can I tell you something?" "Always," Daniel said. "My wish. I wish that I could stop having nightmares. I wished I could just be a normal kid who doesn't get scared of dark rooms and loud noises and people touching me without warning." "Do you think wishes like that can come true?" Daniel's heart broke and mended simultaneously. "I think with enough time and help, yes. Maybe not completely. Maybe you'll always have some triggers, some hard days. But the nightmares will get less frequent. The fear will get smaller. You'll learn to live with it instead of it living with you. That's good enough, Isaiah said. I don't need perfect, I just need better. Better is absolutely possible, Daniel promised. And you're already so much better than you were 2 years ago. Can you see that? Isaiah thought about it. Yeah, I guess I can. I talk now. I laugh sometimes. I'm not scared every single second. So yeah, better. I'm proud of you, Daniel said. Both of you. Every single day, I'm proud of how hard you're working to heal. Isaiah hugged him. A quick hug. Still not entirely comfortable with extended physical contact, but a hug nonetheless. I'm glad you found us, he whispered, even though it was hard, even though it hurt. I'm glad. Me too, Daniel said. Every day. Me too. After Isaiah went to bed, Daniel sat alone in his study, looking at the photo on his desk. It was new, taken at the beach a year ago. Him and Isaiah and Naomi, sandy and sunburned and smiling. Not the forced smiles of trauma survivors trying to appear normal. Real smiles. Happy smiles. He thought about the man he'd been 4 years ago. The billionaire CEO so consumed with work and grief that he'd stopped really living. The man engaged to a woman he didn't love, building an empire to fill the void where his children had been. That man was gone. Replaced by someone who understood that success wasn't measured in dollars or deals, but in moments. In Isaiah learning to speak again. In Naomi letting herself be a child instead of a protector. In mornings where they all ate breakfast together without anyone checking the exits first. His phone buzzed, a message from his former assistant, now working for the company that had bought his pharmaceutical business. Thought you should know. The pediatric cancer treatment you developed? It was just approved by the FDA. It's going to save thousands of lives. You should be proud. Daniel read the message and smiled. He was proud. That research had been born from grief, from wanting to save other people's children since he couldn't save his own. And now it would do exactly that. His greatest professional achievement, completed during his darkest personal time. But it wasn't his greatest achievement overall. That honor belonged to the 2 children sleeping down the hall, the ones he'd lost and found, and was slowly, painstakingly helping heal. He typed back a simple response. Thank you for telling me. That means everything. Then he put his phone away, turned off the lights, and went to check on his children one last time before bed. A nightly ritual that soothed his own anxieties as much as theirs. Naomi was asleep, her room organized with military precision, everything in its place. Control was how she managed her trauma, structure and order and predictability. Isaiah's room was more chaotic, art supplies scattered across his desk, drawings pinned to every wall. Creativity was how he processed, colors and shapes expressing what words still sometimes couldn't. Both rooms had night lights. Both doors were open. Both children breathed deeply in sleep that was becoming more peaceful with each passing month. Daniel stood in the hallway between their rooms, overwhelmed by love so fierce it was almost painful. These were his children. Scarred, traumatized, healing. His children who'd survived hell and were learning to live again. His children who taught him every day what real strength looked like. He'd lost billions of dollars, lost his company, lost his reputation, lost 3 years to grief and lies and misunderstanding. But he'd gained something infinitely more valuable. He'd gained his children back. He'd gained the chance to be the father they needed. He'd gained a future built on love instead of loss. And in the end, that trade was worth everything. As Daniel Moon finally allowed himself to sleep that night, in a house filled with healing instead of ghosts, in a life rebuilt from ruins, he understood something fundamental. Some things could never be stolen, no matter how much time passed or how much was taken away. Love survived, family endured, and hope, even when buried beneath years of darkness, could still find its way back to the light. His children were home, and so was he. Finally, after so many years of being lost, they were all home. 5 years had passed since the rescue. Isaiah was 14 now, thriving in school, his leg completely healed. He'd discovered a passion for art therapy and wanted to help other trauma survivors when he grew up. He still had hard days, but they were outnumbered by good ones. Naomi was 16, a straight-A student planning to study law. She wanted to prosecute child abusers, to make sure what happened to her and Isaiah never happened to anyone else. She'd recently started allowing herself to have friends, to trust people outside her immediate family. It was slow progress, but it was progress. Daniel had rebuilt his consulting business into something sustainable and meaningful. He'd never be a billionaire again, but he was comfortable. More importantly, he was present. He never missed a school event, a therapy session, or a quiet evening at home with his children. Keisha had been released from psychiatric prison the year before, after serving her sentence and being declared stable by multiple independent evaluations. She lived in a small apartment in Seoul, working as a researcher at a medical nonprofit. She'd written to Daniel, asking if she might someday meet her children again. Daniel had asked Isaiah and Naomi. The answer was no. Not yet. Maybe someday. But not yet. And that was okay, because healing happened on its own timeline, not anyone else's. The four of them, Daniel and his children, and the ghost of the woman who'd birthed them, were learning to coexist in a world that had broken them and was slowly putting them back together. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was real, messy, complicated. Full of hard days and setbacks and scars that would never fully fade, but it was also full of love and laughter and the hard-won knowledge that survival was possible, that healing was possible, that family, even when shattered, could be rebuilt into something strong and beautiful and worth fighting for. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything.